Hello there, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of the Train Crash podcast. Yes, I can't believe it's gone this far either. So, what we're going to be doing today is what we call the modelling helpline, where you drop us a message over on our Instagram account, which is the Train Crash Pod, and we answer it in a video like this. It should be very nice. We'll have a little discussion about each question, and hopefully we'll help you model. So, the first question that we had in was one that I'll be asking to Luke now. And it is extortionate prices and affording models. How do you do it? Because obviously we've both got relatively big collections. You've got quite a few Sluzler diesels and things like that. How do you afford them?
I'd say I've experienced quite a few different budgets of modelling on. I'm on a bit of a large budget now when I started off modelling. But I'd say it depends because the hobby is so much more than just buying locos and running it. It's building a layout and learning the electrical side and weathering and scenery. And I find that the way to make the hobby most affordable is, well, the fun part is obviously going to be the locos. That's where people like to focus on. And the way you can kind of make that cheaper, I found, is by trying to cut costs of scenery, buildings, woodwork, electrical bits, and that kind of stuff. So learning how to scratch build buildings, I think, is a great way to save money. And it saved me so much money. Because if you look at the price of modern resin buildings and even some card kits, they're going to set you back more than a scratchbook model could do. And if you can redirect those funds that you'd focus for modelling buildings and put those to your locos, that really helps. And that's what I've done. So I've scratched all my buildings, and it's a really easy, simple skill to learn. You build it up as you go along, and the techniques you learn become more effective over time. So that's something I can put forward to get to my logo collection. Also, I look at secondhand stuff a lot. I've got a couple of favourite secondhand websites. I always have to keep an eye on eBay as well. I know you're, you like to buy lots of stuff off eBay, and it's a great place to buy second-hand stuff, and you can get really good prices as well. And it's just a way to save money, I think. And Bachmann diesels in particular, they've stood the test of time. And I've bought Bachmann diesels from the early 2000s, and they still run beautifully for me. So second-hand, saving money from other areas of the hobby, so that might be instead of buying particular branded LEDs and LED resistor kits and stuff like that, buying them direct from China for pence. As long as you don't mind waiting 6 weeks for them to come in the post, then you're going to save yourself a couple of quid there. And learning how to make your own baseboards out of wood as well, instead of buying like stuff from the Tim Horn range, stuff like that. Those are really good baseboards. They're often quite expensive. So I think, yeah, in summary, just trying to save money in other areas by doing a lot more yourself than buying stuff in. But saying that, it's not impossible to do it if you do want to buy stuff in. And that's when I think budgeting and saving up is really important. And I think that's probably one of the most effective ways to do it.
Definitely.
So,
and I think... Sorry, I'll let you go. I'll let you finish.
No, you finish. I've got a question for you in a minute. So.
All right. Okay. So one thing that I was just going to say is eBay is brilliant for finding stuff cheaply, because every so often someone does put something on, not having an idea of the value, and sometimes you can pick up a little bargain. Although it might take a little bit of work or whatever. Non-runners are also a very good shout. I know Luke's bought an 08 or whatever that was like £5 or whatever, Bachmann one. But another thing that shouldn't be discounted is like deals, Hatton's Deal Essentially, or Rails of Sheffield, their advent calendar sort of thing.
So unfortunately, at this point, Oliver's audio cuts out for a couple of seconds. But in summary, what he's saying is that he's only bought 3 locos new, and all of those have been discounted through his local model shop.
If you do have access to a local model shop, do use it. Because if you spend a bit of time in there and a bit of money as well, you will obviously get that little bit of cash off as well. So obviously use or lose your local model shop, but also don't be afraid to look online for the best deals. Kerno Model Rail Centre, their bargains area is brilliant. So does Rails of the Sheffield at the moment, actually. So just don't be afraid to have a look out on those sales websites and have an idea of what you want from a certain model. You might want an 060 outside cylinder locomotive that's industrial, or you might want a big locomotive like a Class 20 or something. Just have a look out and about and make a note of what you actually want. Keep an eye on the prices, and if you can, hold off buying it ready to RRP, and give it a month or two, 4-6 months maybe, and prices begin to curb and come down and they're on the sale. Look at the Hornby B2s, which are recently in the Hatton sale, or the Halogen 1361s that were again on the Halogen sale, and Rails of Sheffield. So just don't be afraid to be looking out on those sales sections. Follow them on social media. That's where you get the best deals, I find.
Yeah, definitely. So I've got a question for you. It's kind of on the same kind of price theme. Ready to run, is it worth it, or are kits worth it as well? And they worth looking into as an alternative to buying a ready to run?
I don't think, obviously, modern ready-to-run models are, most of them are brilliant. Some of them are beginning to show their age, the likes of the Bachmann WDO 280s and things like that, beginning to show the teeth a little bit. They're looking a bit long in the teeth, so are certain Hornby models like the 2P and things like that. But all in all, I'd say most modern ready-to-run models, if you can get them on a sales discount or whatever, so say the Hornby Packet W4 that Kernow had in a couple of years ago for 70 quid, those models are exquisite, and for 70 quid they are brilliant. So I'd say most ready-to-run models are worth the money. However, kits are well worth looking into. Obviously, you've got prototypes that just aren't represented elsewhere in ready-to-run, but it also gives you a chance to expand your skill set, and that's what this hobby's about, is it's expanding your skill set and what you can do. And yeah, it suddenly opens doors. Certain kit manufacturers, obviously more dear than others. Some of them rely on ready-to-run chassis and things like that. But it's all about pitching what kits that you want and building up to those more difficult kits, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there's gentle ways to ease yourself into kit building, and so you can buy ready to run chassis for certain models as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the Parkside, so Parkside Dundas tooling, their kits are all fantastic, and I've put together quite a few of those kits. And as someone who's not built a wagon kit in ages and years, it's a really easy and gentle way to step back into kit building. Something I really
they have
enjoy
transfers.
as well.
And they have transfers, which is another big thing.
And when a kit comes with transfers and wheels and wheel bearings, or you just glue and paint it, proper bearings. It's a really great way to do it. And I'd say sometimes it's difficult to compare, because ready to run, you buy it and you take out the box, you think that looks great, I might weather it, or I might fit a crew, I might fit coal, and that's nice. You've customized it a little bit. But when you look at a wagon that you've built, you know that you've done everything with that wagon. You've built it, you've assembled it, you've painted it, you've weathered it, you've fitted couplings, you've worked incredibly hard. And if I could choose kit or ready to run of certain mods, I'd probably choose kit every time. I think they're a great way to go. And as you say, expand your skill set. It's an opportunity there for you. And so some kits are more expensive, and I'd say if you look at like Etch Brass and X Nickel logo kits from like Judith Edge, they're very expensive, but they're so high quality. With your Mashima motors and 100-to-1 gearboxes and stuff like that, you're getting something of extreme quality. So maybe you see those really expensive kits, don't look down on them, but because of their price, they're just a very high quality model, I'd say. So
definitely. And kind of linking to kit building, we've had a question here. How do you paint without brush strokes? So that's quite common when you are building kits. Obviously, you would need to paint them, but also when you're painting buildings or whatever. How do you not get those brush strokes, which can arguably ruin good models?
So I'd say, first of all, spray it. Do lots of light misting coats of whatever spray paint you're using on whatever surface. Light misting coats is what I use. I often prime my models before, so I don't need to apply thick layers of paint. That's where brushstrokes come in. You're either using a thick paint or thick layers of paint, and that's where brushstrokes come in. So if you can airbrush or spray it with a rattle can, I'd advise you do that. But obviously, if you're trying to paint brickwork or stonework, or even if you're trying to repaint a loco and you don't have a rattle can or an airbrush, I'd say thin your paints. So first, we've got to know what you thin your paints with. If you're using enamel paints, something like White Spirit would work. And if you're using acrylics, you can use water, but you can also get special acrylic thinners. But if you're and that'll work both ways. If you're trying to thin the paint or something like that. So that's one way to remove brush strokes. Another is, I guess you could sand the model down after you painted it, but they'd have to put a second coat on. So applying lots of thin coats and thinning your paints before using them is the best way to do that. And if you get a brush stroke it's not the end of the world. I've got a model I've brush painted ages ago. I used enamel paints. I didn't thin the enamel paints, and it gave it a great colour. But there were brush strokes in, and I managed to weather them in to look like a streaking effect, and it was all fine. So, yeah, it's not a massive issue. It's fairly easy to solve as well. So we're in a time of lockdown, and I know I found it sometimes find it a little bit difficult to motivate myself in the hobby. How do you go about motivating yourself in the hobby?
Well, I'm very fortunate in the fact that I've had a little bit of time away from the hobby. So as this lockdown's occurred, I've kind of spiked myself back into it all. And I've started another layout and things like that. Got a couple of projects on the go. But the way that I keep myself going is I always have like a bit of an end goal. So that would look brilliant in that colour. So I've got a Dapple 14 XX sitting in front of me that will be put into NCB maroon, and I just am transfixed with that image in my mind of how good it'll look in theory. So that'll be that's what I'm working towards with that. So I'm doing the extra fitted handrails and things like that, and that's what's keeping me going. I also don't push myself to do something in the hobby every day. It's just if I feel like doing it, then I come and do some work on the models or whatever. But equally, I'm not going, oh, I need to do some modelling each day. It's just a little hobby, and at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's a hobby. We come back to it. We change projects. A lot of modelers tend to flip between a lot of projects, and that's natural. And it's just a case of making sure that you're just actually getting them done. YouTube's a brilliant source, but something else that's particularly helping me at the moment is a certain competition that's being run by a certain podcast here on YouTube that's cheap, easy to enter, doesn't take up much space at all, and I'm really having fun messing about with the different techniques and things I've not used previously, and that's really exciting me and interesting me, is that I'm using different scenics and different things like that. I've rusted rails for the first time. I've used the innards of tea bags for scenery and things like that. I'm building old kits and things and brick papering the outsides and things like that. So it's all about, number one, having a change every now and again, not forcing yourself to do stuff every day. I hate writing lists for the hobby. I tend to find myself just floating between stuff and doing little bits here and there. And also joining the Train Crash Podcast A4 diorama competition.
Nothing like a bit of a plug there, is there? I'd say about keeping myself motivated, it's kind of looking for inspiration, and it depends what you enjoy the most. Now, I absolutely hate woodwork to bits. I just don't like it. I can't really do it as well, which probably doesn't help. And I hate electrical bits as well. So I often find just looking beyond what I'm doing currently to know I'm working to a wider goal of building a layout and to be able to envisage the final scene. And not everyone's going to enjoy every stage of the building a layout or the hobby, really. So just pushing on and draw inspiration. And even in those jobs you don't enjoy, make them jobs you do enjoy. By maybe having some of your favorite YouTube channel, cough cough, Luke Noble on YouTube, playing in the background. You
could have plugged this one. Plug this one.
This one, but I'm selfish. What can I say? Sorry, I need the views. So yeah, that's how I'd say I motivate myself in the hobby.
Having something. If you are finding a job difficult, look at something on YouTube, or just try different techniques. That's a big thing of keeping me interested. Is I like trying things in different ways and experimenting. And experimenting will help you stay engaged because you're just thinking, will this work? And there's something innately human about that. Is I wonder if this will work. And yeah, and that's something I'd suggest, and that's the reason why I'm particularly enjoying the diorama competition, is because it's not going to mess any of my layouts up. It's just a nice little bit of something to be experimenting with. And something that kind of links through to that, I think, in some vague ways. We all have to start from somewhere, and how do you get into the hobby nowadays? Obviously, not every child wants to be an engine driver like they did in the 1950s, 1960s. Yes, we've had some big breakthroughs in preservation, but trains aren't on children's consciousness. How do we get people into the hobby, and how did you get into the hobby?
Well, I actually read an interesting article. I can't remember why I read this, but it was basically the gist of the article was saying is if you look at kind of the boomer generation, which are typically the older generation in the hobby right now, whilst they were growing up, trains were a big part of transport. You know, you went to see your grandparents, you got the train there because car ownership wasn't really there. So lots of people use the train for public transport. People had lots of experiences on them, so they might be more inclined or keen to model them. But nowadays, lots of families have cars, so people rarely get the trains, and people often get the trains for commuting or for transport, where it's a last resort. So they might not have those fond memories. But for getting into the hobby myself, I'd say I'd always had an interest in trains, and I was kind of bored. It was just something to do, something interesting to do, something different as well. But also, I love the idea of trying to replicate something in miniature from realism and trying to be as realistic as I possibly can. And it's the kind of that interest in doing that, I guess. I'd say what actually got me into the hobby was Hornby magazine. I definitely provided the history, which I really like the history side of Rowley modelling. Some inspirational layouts, the projects, and the more I read this magazine, I picked it up because I had no other magazines to read really. I picked this magazine up, and it was just so engaging and interesting and different, and they put it across in such a fascinating way that I was kind of hooked, and I couldn't see myself in any other hobby really, apart from Rowley modelling. But yeah, I'd say I've got to give it to Hornby magazine, definitely. What about yourself? How did you get yourself in the hobby?
I obviously had a train set as a kid. Thomas the Tank Engine was massive when I was a kid. Actually, I found my nan, big up Mrs. R, gave me a big Thomas the Tank Engine book that I had as a kid. Was reading it a couple of nights ago. Brilliant fun. But no, Thomas the Tank Engine obviously has a lot to do with a lot of kids, and I think it was obviously its prevalence when I was growing up. I was born in 2001, so that obviously sparked an interest in trains. Obviously, I remember visiting preserved railways as a kid and things like that. But what I really found out when I was playing with the hobby as a kid is that I just liked controlling trains, but I spent some time away from the hobby, and if I'm honest, I wanted something that I could do and that would be different and that I could do and that'd improve my own skill set, and I think the hobby's brilliant for that. YouTube really got me into it. How-to videos, reviews were the first thing I watched. I remember the first model railway video I watched was an Intercity 82 review on a Hornby 040 star set, and that got me interested. Then I went down the reviews. Then I went down looking at people's layouts and how-tos and things like that, and that just got me interested into the hobby. Hornby magazine then started my subscription to there, and just easy reading articles, but also the history pages I found brilliant. And yeah, the online side of it, RM Web, Instagram, things like that, I think all help grow the hobby out. And obviously with things like train siding and things like that, hopefully grown in the future. I think that's a great way to get into the hobby. My next question for you is, are ready-to-run manufacturers ignoring certain eras or parts of the railway community, model railway community, rather?
That's an interesting question. I think, well, interestingly, we've just seen a massive growth since 2016 when the Peckett was released, I think 2016, that the industrial market has just kind of grown and grown and grown. And now we're seeing kit manufacturers utilising these chassis like Hardy's Hobbies, utilising these chassis like the Pecketts and the Rustons that Hornby made. And so I think we have seen markets ignored in the past, but we've also seen markets opened, and they have listened to people's voices. But I kind of think some markets and some areas of the hobby aren't as in demand. So if you think about the time setting, a lot of people model 50s, 60s, 70s, and that kind of era. And a lot of the industrial engines that Hornby released also can kind of fit into that era. So they're kind of, I guess, multi-purpose. They can be justified to have on that layout in that era. But the era that has been a little bit ignored is kind of Victorian steam. So though we have got the Hornby Rocket, that's basically the only model of that kind of design era that we see.
Yeah.
So that vintage era. So I'd say that is definitely maybe an under-modeled area, an under kind of funded by RTRO. But again, I can't imagine there's many modelers in that kind of category. The models that are in there might enjoy the challenge of not having the race run there. Saying that, we have seen the Bachmann Atlantics, the Bachmann Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway 242 tank engine are also repainted into pre-grouping liveries. And then also the GNR Stirling Single has been produced exclusively for that kind of era as well. So maybe it's maybe not as underfunded as RTR as we think, but kind of those classic designs are underfunded. So you would be able to model the era, but not that. But saying that, there are a lot of kits available for that kind of era. So I know it's like the Hull and Barnsley Railway, something like that. There's lots of kits out about that railway, stuff like that. So. Yeah.
And one thing that I will say about the locomotives that are produced ready to run, so like you mentioned I believe it's a Class 5 tank, the 242 Lancashire and Yorkshire one. When released in that livery, I believe it was a limited edition. The Great Central 280, when that was released in the Great Central livery, that was a limited edition. So those do tend to be the models that are they're ready to they're limited editions, and maybe that does show that there's not necessarily a market for them as pieces of modelling work that can be worked on. Maybe they're more of a display piece because of the more ornate liveries. Look at the Southeastern and Chatham locomotives. They came out, such as a P class, the H class. They sold like hotcakes, but then Bachmann's SEC or Birdcage coaches are being pushed through the sales at 20 odd quid off their RRP. Now that was maybe because the RRP was ridiculous for them, or it could be showing that maybe people like the ornate liveries on locomotives, like a limited edition sort of style thing, but don't really want to model them as such.
Yeah, it is a very challenging era to model because there's just a distinct lack of photographs, and architecture was still very different, and dress period was also different for figures, and road vehicles were also very different. So it's definitely something I normally associate with more fine-scale modelers. That's probably just me. So the last question, this is a good one for you because you always like to modify your locos, is about attaching details and detailing locos. What do you use and how do you go about it?
Now, I find detailing models something that goes hand in hand, really. I quite like it. So the first thing that I would do if somebody's brand new to detailing is I'd suggest getting hold of some lamps, some oil cans, and some fire irons and other tools and things like that. There's loads available online. You can get them 3D printed or white metal cast. Figure fitting as well is a big part of it. One thing that I would say is the Revell Extra Thin Cement. It's Tamiya Extra Thin Cement is brilliant for this. Leaves a nice glue on the bottom, say the figure's feet or whatever, pop them in. There's no evidence of it because of the little brush that it's applied with. It's brilliant for that sort of thing. Vac pipes and things like that are quite often fitted to locomotives. I don't really fit them to mine because obviously I run a colliery and they were very rarely used. Although if it comes in the detailing bag, I do fit them. And that's another thing that I will say is people don't tend to fit stuff in the detailing bag. And honestly, that stuff in the detailing bag goes such a long way. Otherwise, you end up with holes on the buffer beams and things like that, and that can sometimes spoil the effect of the locomotive. But if you're looking for extra fitted parts and extra detailing bits as such, sorry, there appears to be children screaming outside, so apologies if you can hear that. But yeah, there's lots of companies that do cater to your wants and needs. RT models are a good shout. And I'd just look at locomotives that interest you and how you can transfer that into your own usage on your railway. Etched brass number plates, builders plates, and name plates are always a good shout to help lifting a model and detailing them up. And yeah, that's what I'd suggest, is just having a look online for the vast amount of bits that you can fit. And also just fitting the bits that come with the locomotive. That goes such a long way.
Definitely, I'd say one of the most effective ways of detailing, if you can class it as detailing, is weathering the loco.
Oh, definitely.
I find weather it before you put the details, but that is the single biggest kind of effect you can do to the loco to make it look different and unique as well. And it can sometimes add value to your locos as well. I'd definitely say loco lamps are a fantastic shout. Also, real coal if it's a diesel. If it's a steam loco. Diesel locos sometimes like a little bit of gloss black paint or a bit of gloss varnish where the diesel fuel caps are. But again, that kind of just enhances the weathering effect. Spring-side models are a great shout for those kind of extra white metal fire irons bits. And Model U have just released a kind of combined kit of loco details. I think that's like lamps, a tool, some oil cans, something like that. A great little, very well put together kit of little 3D printed parts, and very high quality 3D printed parts. I just put out there. So
Yeah,
we're kind of going to bring this this podcast to a close. This is kind of part of a series. So any modelers' questions, drop it on the comment section below, or DM us on Instagram, and we would love to feature your question in the next edition. Secondly, we're also running a competition at the time. This is the A4 diorama competition. Go check out our previous video. If you go to our channel page, it'll be the one before this one.
Oh, is that up on the top left-hand corner of the screen? Top right-hand corner of the screen.
If we put it in the flag so people can just click on it now and enter the competition.
Oh, wow.
We're so smart. How have we managed to do that? It's almost like we know how to use YouTube. Whoa, that's a step up. Not gonna lie, that took about an hour to learn. So
the new Creator Studio is rubbish, though. The new Creator Studio is rubbish.
I'm not a fan.
Can we have the classic one back, please?
Please, YouTube, if you're ever going to watch this video. So definitely go check out that video. And it'd be awesome to have you entered into that competition and subscribe. Stay tuned because we're going to have some more exciting podcasts on the way. And we'd love to hear your input, feedback, or whatever on the comment section below. And stay safe, wash your hands, and we will hopefully see you soon. I'll also be live streaming every Monday on Instagram. So if you've got any questions or stuff you want answering straight away, or if you want to come for a chat and have a bit of a laugh, because it's called Train Crash for a reason. It normally goes wrong at some stage. So thanks for watching, listening, guys.
Because of someone.
Yeah, and we will see you later. All right, bye.
All right, peace.